Hi there, my name is Sheldon, and today my dog and I are out in these lovely woods, and she's sniffing around, having a great time, chasing squirrels. And I thought I'd like to speak about something that's been on my mind a bit lately. And I suppose the term would be camping at your pain. Now what that means is we all have a tendency to revisit and sometimes spend a little bit too much time dwelling on past events, physical trauma, emotional trauma, things you might have done. And I think a lot of the time we allow these things to come up unwittingly. We let them surprise us in moments when we are least equipped to deal with difficult situations. Or they might remind us, we might be in situations that remind us of things we've done in the past. And those things put burdens on our mental well-being. Now, we need to find ways to move past that. We need to find ways to no longer, I suppose, camp at our pain. And I suppose to use an analogy that would be quite fitting today is continue the hike. Move forward. A little bit cheesy, but it gets the point across. It makes me think. There was a situation maybe about a decade, maybe 11 years ago, where I worked as a manager for a restaurant. It was a chain restaurant. They did quite well for themselves. The group is unfortunately in a bit of a decline at the moment, but at the time they were phenomenal, and the store that I worked for was the flagship for the group. You know, they demoed all the new menus, they demoed all the new concepts and types of training for the staff. It was a really good environment. It had a good collection of people, subsequent owners, subsequent management teams that did some really good work, and it was a great environment to work at. But I think when I worked there as a manager, I think was in a situation where I was heavily burdened by some of the issues I'd had with myself growing up. You know, things that had happened to me in school, things that had happened to me in various situations where I might not necessarily have had the tools at the time to process these things. And as a result, I was a bit of an angry person. I wasn't necessarily physically aggressive or intimidating to people, but I was angry, and I let that color many of my decisions and the way I made those decisions. Now, at the time, there was a person that worked there, and I think this woman wasn't necessarily as invested in working there as she could have been. I think she was dealing with her own issues. And in my way, I was not observant enough to realize that this was a person that might have needed a little bit of leeway. And I gave her a hard time. I gave her quite a hard time because, in my mind, the decisions she was making were not the decisions I would have made. And the way she served her clients or did some of her work could have been done in different ways. And I chose, instead of fostering an environment or a series of conversations that might have led her to utilize her particular skill set in a way that would have worked for her, I chose to actively make her life difficult. And this is something that actually comes to mind quite a bit. Now, I reached out quite a while back. I sent a message, engaged, said a little bit of what I've said now. I wanted to apologize for some of my actions, and I suppose it lifted some of the burden, but it never really changed the fact that I made the choice to make this poor woman's life difficult in a time where she didn't need it. And that was as a result of me carrying subsequent negative experiences along with me. Or, I suppose, to use today's analogy, is I camped at them. And I let myself be drawn off emotionally and mentally by these various situations in my past, which led me to acting in a way that I still regret a decade and some change later. And I suppose in many ways I'm still camped in that situation because I've not been able to let it go. I've changed as a person, my outlook has changed, the way that I behave has changed, but yet that was still something that is a part of my past, and it's something that I've reflected on, and in many ways that has helped me change my actions in situations even to this day. But I say these things as a way to make you think of little things you might have done in the past, things that might sit with you and come to your mind unbidden in situations where you might not expect it, or it still brings you pain or shame or discomfort to think about. Actively engage with that situation. Forgive yourself and remedy it. If it's somebody else that you wronged, reach out to them. Even if they don't reply. Perhaps they reply with negativity. But reach out to them either way. Apologize. Or even if you're doing something, let's say you've developed habits you might not like. I know a couple of people who have got trouble with gambling. I saw a couple of bad things that have happened as a result of that to people that I've worked with, associated with, and might not necessarily communicate as much with this day and age. But, I've seen how situations like that, addictive situations, can ruin lives. And, they constantly say, I need to stop. I'd like to get past this. And they don't. And maybe something like that is happening in your life. Maybe somebody you know is going through a situation where addiction or anger or trauma is holding them back. I'd say that you need to visit those situations. You need to deal with them. You need to find a resolution for yourself that allows you to put that burden down and begin moving forward. To not hold on to it. To not, I suppose, camp at that pain. Self-reflection is important. Dealing with your issues is important. And the goal is to move forward in a positive way. I think we all have the capacity to do that. It's simply a choice that we need to make. That old analogy of there are two wolves inside of you that are constantly battling. And whichever one you feed more is the one that ends up winning. So, do you feed the doubt and the negativity and the pain of past situations? Or do you rather feed positivity, your own future, decisions to move forward and do things that are constructive, both for yourself and the people around you? Making that choice can be a liberating and freeing experience. And I urge you to do that. Now, I'd love to get your thoughts on this conversation. I'd love to hear some comments about, perhaps things you might have gone through, and especially situations on how you've dealt with those problems and moved forward. And I'd like to think that if you've found use in hearing things like this, that you might give some thought to subscribing. But either way, go make the right choices. Go and be the person you'd like to be. And if there's somebody else out there that might need a bit of a nudge in the right direction, or just a helping hand, or a shoulder to lean on, go and be that person for somebody else. Now have a great day.